The French Revolution of 1848 inspired a revolt in Ireland the very same year. In a famine-ridden, oppressed country, it probably wasn't the best time for a rebellion, but on the 29th of July 1848, in Famine Ballingarry, County Tipperary, the Young Irelanders rose. The Young Irelanders were founded in 1842, and later that year they published their own Irish nationalist newspaper called The Nation. The men behind this newspaper were Charles Gavan Duffy, Thomas Davis, and John Blake Dillon. As blight rampaged through Ireland, destroying 3/4 of the island's potato crops, food was still leaving the country as Irish people starved to death. At this point in time, 3 million Irish people survived on the potato as 90% of their calorific intake. A disease called typhus began to spread through the country. Faces swelled, rashes and sores appeared all over the body, limbs were shook, your fingers and toes went black, your eyes went colourless, and after about 7 to 10 days, it would kill you. The previously provided soup kitchens were now abolished, and Prime Minister John Russell sent 16,000 troops to Ireland instead of food. As defeated and weak as the Irish people were, there was indeed an uprising about to happen. In 1847, Thomas Francis Meagher began to travel west and north of the country, recruiting. He got 5,000 people to join the Young Irelander Party in just a couple of days. On the 15th of March 1848, after hearing the news of the French Revolution, a huge crowd gathered in the music hall in Dublin. Thomas Francis Meagher and William Smith O'Brien gave speeches to fight for Irish freedom. A week later, Meagher and Smith O'Brien were arrested, but soon to get out on bail. A few days after getting out of prison, they left for Paris to seek help for an armed rebellion in Ireland. The French rejected, as they had been warned to not interfere with Great Britain's affairs, and it was clear that the new French Republic valued their good relations with Britain. However, Thomas Francis Meagher did bring something useful back to Ireland. He brought the green, white and orange tricolour. It was flown in Waterford for the first time ever in April 1848. On Sunday, the 16th of July 1848, the Young Irelanders called for a mass meeting at Slievenamon. 50,000 people showed up for the meeting that day. Thomas Francis Meagher addressed the 50,000 men and said that he was an accidental rebel, but with the great hunger, he saw with perfect clarity the worst of all English crimes. With Charles Trevelyan removing all British relief efforts to preserve Irish life, the Young Irelander was left with no choice but to fight. The plan at this stage was to start the revolution in Kilkenny. A week later, on the 22nd of July, the country was placed under martial law. The Young Irelanders were now criminals in the eyes of the British Empire. A price had been put on Meagher and Smith O'Brien's heads. On the 25th of July, the Young Irelanders had a meeting in the town hall in Kilkenny City. They had a plan to take the garrison in Kilkenny if they could get about 500 men to help. They did get some bad news, that all of the members in Kilkenny, only 1 in 4 had weapons, and they were like sharpened farm tools, pikes and pitchforks. So the men decided to move to towns outside Kilkenny. They went to Carrick, Callan and Cashel instead. So eventually the men actually ended up in a place called the Commons in Tipperary. It's just north of Ballingarry. I'm actually in the area right now. I'm going to show you exactly where William Smith O'Brien and the Young Irelanders met up before the rebellion began. While the Young Irelanders were here at the crossroads in Commons, County Tipperary, they spotted a group of hostile-looking policemen and they decided to follow them down the road to a house with a large cabbage patch out the back. The house was the home of Widow McCormack and her 5 children. The police took the family hostage in the house and they barricaded the windows and the doors inside. William Smith O'Brien ordered the police to drop their arms and release the family. The police opened fire and killed one of the Young Irelanders, Thomas Walsh. They also wounded another man, Patrick Kavanagh. Although the rebels completely outnumbered the police, they were only armed with pikes and pitchforks, which were completely useless at a distance. Soon after, over 100 police reinforcements arrived, and the Young Irelanders scattered. Many of the Young Irelanders escaped Ireland and went to the US, people like Michael Dohney and John Blake Dillon. Some other men went to France, like James Stephens for example, and also 4 of the leaders were caught and sentenced to death. William Smith O'Brien, Thomas Francis Meagher, McManus and O'Donoghue. However, their sentence was lessened and they were forced to exile in Van Diemen's Land, which is nowadays Tasmania, just south of Australia. And this is the very house where the 1848 Young Irelander Rebellion took place, and Widow McCormack's house right behind me.